Well, our next guest was there on January 6th, a number of years ago, and had his life turned upside down. He was there to give a speech wandering by the Capitol when, a few months later, the FBI showed up at his house, threw him in prison, and then had his life turned upside down. Well, last night, Brandon Straka received the notification of a lifetime from his lawyer that President Trump had signed an executive pardon for him. I can't imagine what that must have felt like. So let's ask him. Brandon joins us now. Brandon, welcome back to the show. Of course, Brandon Straka, the founder of the Walkaway movement, moving away from this liberal message and leading people to say enough is enough. And I mean, it was really the catalyst, I guess, to walk away permanently from this liberal agenda. But Brandon, nice to see you this morning from Washington, D.C. How does it feel?
It feels amazing, and honestly, I think it's just now starting to kind of sink in and process. I got that call last night from my attorney, and so I had already been booked to do the Greg Kelly show last night on the speculations that pardons might be coming. I got the call like minutes before I went on air, so I was on Greg Kelly's show crying on national television. So I'm a little more composed today. I've processed things a little bit better, and I'm feeling really good today.
So there's been a lot of drama over the past 24 hours. Of course, it was a federal holiday yesterday. So as these pardons were handed down by President Trump, he told his staff, go, take these right now. These people need to be out of prison right now. Many of them locked up. Many of them still awaiting trial, still dealing, not even being sentenced. It's a lot of craziness last night. Being a federal holiday, these people were waiting outside the prison, waiting for them to be released. And you had guards saying, sorry, it's not going to happen tonight. Have you been hearing any of that drama, talking to any individuals who were waiting to be released?
Yes. Yeah, there was a pretty significant group of us last night talking, both people who are January 6 defendants and supporters and people who have organizations trying to help people as they're transitioning out. And there was definitely a good amount of mayhem that was going on last night with people having trouble being processed out. The thing to remember too is it's not just jails and prisons. There are a lot of people also in halfway houses. So there was a man last night. They would not let him out of the halfway house. They wouldn't even give him his keys to his car. So he had to call the sheriff last night. The sheriff showed up. The sheriff said, tough luck. And finally today he did get processed out and he's now done. But it's been crazy because nothing quite like this has ever happened before, from the prosecutions all the way through to the pardons. So a lot of people didn't know how to handle it, but it does seem that, moment by moment, more and more people are getting processed out and beginning to move on with their lives.
So legally, what does this pardon mean for you? What has your attorney told you?
Well, legally, okay, so I pled guilty to a Class B misdemeanor charge. The reason why I pled guilty is because the government, despite the fact that I did not enter the building on January 6th, I did not engage in any violence, vandalism, theft, or destruction, nor did I witness any. And I want to be really clear, I did not witness anybody rioting on January 6th. I know that people have seen that footage on a loop that happened on the west side of the building where there was a fight with officers and people breaking windows. That was not happening on the side of the building I was on, which was the east side. But still, because of who I am and because of what I do, the government, the Biden FBI came, raided me, put me in jail, and they charged me with numerous felony charges. And that is the reason why I pled guilty to a misdemeanor. It was not because I was guilty. I was not guilty. And so for me, it wipes out that misdemeanor charge that I pled guilty to. But the other thing that it allows, and this is hugely important to me, is that it allows me to say clearly and unequivocally, my plea deal was a lie. I was not guilty. I did not do anything that the government alleges that I did, which was the government said that I stood outside of the building shouting, go, 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 to encourage people to go inside the building. They also said that I witnessed the crowd taking a shield from an officer, and then I shouted, take it, take the shield, to encourage the crowd. I did not do that. No such thing happened. I did sign their document and their plea deal saying that I did that, but it was not true. It was never true. I did not do that.
And so that plea deal basically cut your sentencing down significantly. So you're basically, the FBI wanted you to basically lie, right? I mean, they wanted you to lie.
Well, I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
They created a story that was not true and made quite clear that if I were to get my felony charges dropped and be able to plead guilty to a misdemeanor, I had to confess to the story, the lie that they created. And that is what I did. And for 4 years, I have not had the ability to go on a show like yours or go in public and say, I did not do these things. This was never, ever true. But now I can say that. And the last part of it too, I'll
Actually,
tell you, is that
well, we should say 2 years ago when you were first on our show, I mean, your life had been turned upside down, and you were telling me, you're like, I can't say, there's something I'm not allowed to say, and I can't say it on your show because
yeah,
it would violate your plea deal that you made with these crooks.
yeah,
And now you can say it.
that
That
was
must
it.
feel amazing.
If Yeah, I don't want to cry again, so I'm not going to. But yes, it's unbelievable. I cannot tell you what it feels like to be forced to say that you did something that you didn't do, and then the way that the media was reporting on it. So the biggest thing is that they made up this lie that I witnessed the crowd taking a shield and that I shouted take it to encourage the crowd to take the shield. But the government, or the media, didn't just report on it like that. What the media said was Strzok stood outside of the Capitol encouraging the mob to attack the police. That's how it was reported on. So I spent 4 years having the media around the world reporting that on January 6th, I went to the Capitol and encouraged the crowd to attack police officers. No such thing ever happened. And I had to just sit there as my life was being destroyed. And by the way, I got sued over that too. I was sued by 8 Capitol police officers because I told that lie. Thank God I won that lawsuit. But no, this has been an absolute nightmare that from day one was based on a complete and total lie that was created by the FBI and the DOJ.
The media, the liberal media over the past 24 hours has melted down everyone from Rachel Maddow to Chris Cillizza, all of these liberal media hacks in the legacy media. And they're saying this is the great tragedy of the first day of the Trump administration, that he just gave this blanket pardon. Trump was asked about this yesterday, that what about the people that, fought with police officers and so forth? And he said, they've served their time. They've been in there for 4 years. But the liberal media wants to paint everyone who was there that day as having beat up police officers. And you're a perfect example of the hundreds of people that had nothing to do with that at all, that are all caught up in this massive dragnet and this weaponization of the Department of Justice.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too, and I keep repeating this point and I'm not going to stop. There was a time when the purpose of media was to speak truth to power and to hold the government and powerful institutions accountable so that individuals had a voice and individuals could be protected from tyranny. What has happened over the course of decades, but particularly in the last decade, is that the media has decided that it's their reason to exist is to actually make the government more powerful and to provide coverage and basically to help the government stomp on the individual. I mean, no one in media came to me in 4 years. I don't want to say no one, but I mean, the vast majority of the mainstream media never came to me in 4 years and said, what is your side of the story? The government is alleging that you did this, this, and this. Is any of this not true? They took those FBI charging documents and those DOJ sentencing and charging documents, and they just printed them like they were a press release. And they said, Strzok did this, and Strzok did this, and Strzok did this, and didn't even contact me and say, do we have anything wrong here? And as Clayton, as recently as literally a couple of days ago, I did an interview with the Wall Street Journal. And I took the time, I sat down with the reporter for over an hour. We had a conversation in which I clearly said to him, one of the greatest, misrepresentations of my case was that I was a part of the riot, that I'm a January 6th rioter. I said, number one, I did not riot. Number two, I didn't witness a riot. Number three, nobody around me was rioting. Yes, I pled guilty to disorderly conduct because I had to, but even disorderly conduct is not rioting. But I said it's been such an egregious fabrication to constantly have the media saying, I'm a writer, I'm a writer, I'm a January 6th writer. You know what he does? He prints his article the other day and calls me a January 6th writer. And I'm
Of
like,
course.
I and I called him on the phone,
They're
and
all
I
crooks.
just I was like, is it your job to help the government continue to perpetuate a false narrative? Like, do you understand that you have the opportunity here to help an individual who's being attacked by the government, and that once upon a time that was your job? That was what you were supposed to do. These guys love helping the government crush individuals. It's insane.
Yeah, the legacy media, extensions of the intelligence state, their intention, extensions of the Department of Justice. It's really, really deeply disturbing. That's why the
Yeah,
trust in legacy media has plummeted to record lows, and people just aren't paying attention to them anymore. They've
right.
lost their teeth. They've lost their teeth, which I guess is a good thing. That's one thing that's emerged over
Yeah.
the past few years. Brandon, I'll get you out of here on this so you can really just try to enjoy your day. But actually, two things. I'm just curious, how were your travels limited? So over these past 4 years, people think, oh, you pled this, you did this. You had to check in with individuals before you could travel, get on an airplane, monitored. But you couldn't, go out of the country, I suppose. Like how restrictive was everything that you had to go through?
Oh, I mean, so yes, I've been under federal supervision now for nearly 4 years to the day, which means I wasn't allowed to leave the state that I live in without permission from the court. But in addition to that, for years, the Joe Biden government, DOJ and TSA, put every J6er on their quad list terrorism list, meaning that we weren't allowed to get on an airplane without going through hours of screening by teams of TSA agents. I'm not making this up. And then every one of us was required to fly with air marshals. So we had armed air marshals flying with us, people with misdemeanor charges, the government resources being dedicated to having armed air marshals flying with January 6th misdemeanants on flights. And we tried to make a joke out of it, as many of us who went through this as possible, because all you can do is, try to find the humor in the situation. But I used to go on social media and say, I'm so sorry to the people of America. Because of me, you're significantly less safe every time you get on an airplane, because the government is dedicating all of their resources to tracking me, having air marshals fly with me, having security protocols dedicated to me, while actual terrorists are just sliding right through because we're dedicating all of our resources to January 6th misdemeanor defendants.
Well, I've spoken to air marshal supervisors who've told me that, and the air marshals they do have aren't being used for the purposes that they're hired to do. In fact, they're, handing out sandwiches at the southern border for
That's right.
illegal aliens coming across the border. So not only
Yep.
are they tracking on flights January 6th defendants, but they're also at the southern border handing out sandwiches and gift cards to illegal aliens coming across the border. Man, I'm so glad that this
That's right.
stuff is stopping. You can't even make this up. So, Brandon, I will get you out of here on this. I've seen other January 6th defendants saying, it's amazing that I've gotten this pardon, but of course it doesn't erase the hundreds of hours of community service that I've had to put in, the hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees that I've had to use and spend in order to fight this. So unfortunately, you don't get that back. What did you have to endure in that regard?
Well, so I got what I call the trifecta, which means I was criminally charged, I was civilly sued, and I was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee. So I had to handle three different buckets of legal expenses and fees for January 6th, going through the criminal case, the civil case, and J6 committee. All in, I spent about $350,000 in lawyers' fees defending myself on all of these various January 6th things. Now, I want to be clear. I'm telling you that because it's shocking and it's terrible and people should know. But I always have to make it a point to say, don't shed a tear for me. Shed a tear for all of the people around the country who have lost their homes, their cars, their life savings. I know people who had farms and ranches. They had to sell their farms and ranches. There are January 6th defendants who have truly lost everything. I know January 6th defendants who are living in vans with their children. It's not a joke. They've lost everything. I didn't lose everything. Thank God, because of who I am, I had a lot of support. A lot of people got behind me. This didn't bankrupt me. It didn't ruin my life financially in that way, but it has absolutely ruined the lives of thousands of people financially who will never recover from this. They'll never get their life savings out. And some of these people are in their 60s, they're in their 70s. They can't work. They can't have a career. It's over. They're done. And I just want people to not forget those people and put your heart and your focus on them. Don't worry about me. Worry about those guys. They're the ones who need help now.
Well said. Well said. Well, we are thinking about you. And of course, you've been on our hearts and minds through this ordeal over the past few years. I was just thrilled to see the news last night on this. So congratulations, Brandon. And we hope that there's a sea change happening right now. So thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations again. And yeah, I'm over the moon about it. So thanks, Brandon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you tremendously for all of your support over the last few years. Not everyone gave me a voice or a platform, even on the right. But you always did. And thank you so much.